Welcome to Be Customer Led, where we'll explore how leading experts in customer and employee experience are navigating organizations through their own journey to be customer led, and the actions and behaviors employees and businesses exhibit to get there. And now your host, Marbu Brown.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Be Customer Led. Today, we're coming to you from MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey. And I have with me EJ Kritz, the Chief Experience Officer of DBSI. I'm going to let EJ tell us more about DBSI, but first, I'll let EJ tell us about himself. I want to hear about your journey and how it is you came to be the Chief Experience Officer at DBSI.
I think I'm still trying to figure that out myself. I vaguely remember being an ice cream truck driver in Burlington, Vermont at some point in my life. But I accidentally stumbled my way into banking. I was a marketing person. I was a broadcaster. I think there was a time where I thought I would work in a stadium like this as a commentator, and managed my way to TD Bank, where I got to keep watch over experiential marketing and then eventually sales and service strategy, and worked for Santander Bank leading customer experience, and kind of along about way eventually went into customer experience consulting, which is I think many years ago where we met at a conference at some point.
Right.
And I've always been so passionate about retail banking and specifically the survival of the bank branch. And so about a year and a half ago, I was speaking at an event that was focused on bank branching, and I was giving a talk about the employee's role in making sure that a bank branch design really came to life. And an individual from DBSI approached me and said, "Hey, are you looking for a job?" And I had so much respect for the organization that I said yes, and really relished at the opportunity to have a front row seat for the design of the branch of the future. So I'm not a banker, but I'm a banker, and I've been in the business for, decades now, and just a huge advocate of all things retail banking.
Cool. Well, that's EJ.
That's me.
Now tell us about DBSI for people who don't know what DBSI is all about.
The short answer is we build and we design branches is the short answer. But why I love DBSI is because we really do everything in the four walls of the bank branch, from the technology, the banking equipment, digital signage, yes, the design, yes, the architecture, yes, the construction. But it really is about creating an experience and something that is formative and progressive for retail banking. And we work with banks and credit unions all over the country of all different sizes and varying degrees of gutsiness, I guess I would say. Some folks looking for a little bit more of that traditional banking environment, and some folks who are like, "What's the coolest thing you've ever done? Do that and push that to the next level." So, by and large, all we really do at DBSI all day is eat, sleep, and breathe the future of retail banking and how we can design and build better banking experiences.
Cool. So, it's interesting. Probably about a year and a half ago, maybe a little more, somebody sent me a picture, and it was a picture of what used to be a bank branch. And now that particular place was a dinosaur-themed mini golf course. I looked at that picture and I asked myself, is the owner of this place trying to make a statement about bank branches, right? Or is he just into dinosaurs, right? I mean, is he saying he's got a future in building mini golf courses that are dinosaur themed because bank branches are going to be dinosaurs, or what, right? And so even as you're talking to me about, building experiences and bank branches and all like that, I want you to talk to that a little bit, because there are some people who had said at one point that, bank branches were just going to go away. In fact, there was even an article that had a date on when the last bank branch would close.
Yeah.
And not so much anymore. People aren't saying that as much anymore. And so I want to get your take on that. What do you see in terms of the future of bank branches, and what does that have to do with the experience for the customers?
Well, it's a funny thing that you asked me that on like this day at this point in time, because, book was recently released by Brett King, who, he's the guy who says that the branches will die. And he and I get into it on LinkedIn every now and again. And he's right that the fastest growing financial institutions in the world are digital banks.
Mm-hmm.
But where his argument falls short is that those aren't the only growing financial institutions in the world. And in fact, in America, if we look at, Chase's recent earnings statement, their consumer bank is crushing it year over year. And they're building branches.
That's right.
And so I think, in America, we do have a certain affinity for the bank branch. But I will tell you, just as it wasn't that long ago that people were writing articles that the bank branch is going to die, if that was on page 2, page 3 was an article saying that retail stores were going to die too.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I, today had the pleasure of, you showed me American Dream here in New Jersey. And all you have to do is walk around American Dream to see that retail is alive and well.
Absolutely.
Forbes wrote, or the Wall Street Journal wrote, that Gen Z may save the shopping mall.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have a new generation of folks that really love in-person experiences.
That's right.
The reason they crave the in-person experiences, though, are different than us.
Yeah.
And the bank branch just serves a different purpose now. No, it's not transactional. And no, if I were to create a bank tomorrow, it would not have tellers, but it would have relationship specialists. It would have problem resolution specialists. It would have digital specialists. It would look a lot more like an Xfinity store or an AT&T store or a T-Mobile store, not only from a design standpoint, but from the standpoint of the experience that the employees deliver to you. So I will die on the hill that bank branches are alive and well, provided you're evolving. If you're still trying to deliver to members and customers the same old retail banking experience, the dinosaurs might be coming for you. But, I shared with an audience today, the reason I'm here is for Valley Bank and a big event that they're having. And, I had a room of 845 retail professionals, and I started my speech to all of them saying that there are many people in this world who believe that your job is going to go away, that the bank branch is going to die, that AI is here to take your job. But they're not in this room to see the spirit of what's being created in a bank like this and by people like the folks that I got to meet with today, who are legitimately in it for the right reasons, to help people. And so long as that help is there, the help will always be needed.
Mm-hmm.
People will always need advice. And as long as there are digital things, guess what? They're always going to break. And especially the younger generations, they have a propensity to want to go to a person to have that fixed, which is why the Apple Genius Bar is still to this day jam-packed. You can't get an appointment at an Apple Genius Bar.
It's hard to get one.
Right?
It's hard to get one. And, it's interesting because, on occasion when I talk to people about this particular perspective, right, I think of, companies that are born digital. Okay. You think of Amazon as a born digital company, but the Amazon physical footprint keeps expanding.
Right.
Right. I mean, Amazon has Whole Foods. Amazon has, Amazon Fresh stores. Amazon has Amazon lockers. You can return stuff from Amazon at Kohl's and at UPS and UPS store and stuff like that. And so Amazon is finding ways for their physical footprint, to expand. You think about Apple. Apple has that physical footprint too, and it has the Genius Bars, and so I think the companies that people would think of as digital are also having a physical presence, and part of it is just some of the things that you were talking about, the relationship aspect of things, the problem resolution aspect of things. And there's some things that, people certainly need a little bit of side-by-side coaching. And, they value the bank branch for that side-by-side coaching. They value, these physical stores, with Apple and Amazon and so on, for some of that side-by-side coaching too. So, yeah, I would say that the demise of the branch has been greatly exaggerated. But you talked about some of these specialists that you would have. Tell me a little bit more about how you see the role of those specialists, like the digital specialists or the problem resolution specialists. Tell me a little bit more about, how you see that role unfolding in the branch.
The hardest thing about that role unfolding in the branch today is the legacy employee. Is not only do I think that the role has to evolve from the standpoint of the tasks that they do every day, but the banker of the future is not a banker today.
Okay.
Banking's not that hard. And it's only getting easier as data becomes democratized, as AI comes into the fold within the bank branches. It's not that hard to teach somebody how to be a banker today. In fact, we work with a company called Connective, where we have a tablet-based environment we can put into branches. I could teach you to be a teller in 15 minutes or less.
Okay.
Because the platform is as intuitive as shopping on Amazon. So imagine if now I don't need to take 2 weeks to teach you how to be a teller. Imagine all the things I could teach you in 2 weeks. And so this now opens up the possibility for banks to start hiring from elsewhere. They don't have to go hiring with banking experience. They don't have to go hiring from all these different places. They can hire from the best in class retailers that have already done a great job showing we hire great human beings. I love citing Lululemon as one of my key examples. And often I'll pull up a Lululemon job description for an audience and I'll juxtapose it with a bank job description. I'll say, so here's a teller job description. It says, XYZ Savings Bank, founded in 18, blah, blah, blah. And you're going to come here and you're going to do X and you're going to do Y and you're going to do Z and other duties as assigned. And it's the most boring thing on earth. Like my kids would not apply for that job. But if you put it up against a Lululemon job description, where, by the way, they call their employees educators.
Okay.
Think about that for a minute.
That's a good name.
It's a great name, and they do. Like when I go into a Lululemon store to buy things for my wife, I don't know how to buy things in a Lululemon store. They educate me on how to make purchases there, but they also have access in their palm to the e-com environment. So if something isn't in the store, they can order for it, right there. I cash out. We're done. So I actually had a gentleman came up to me.
You do Lululemon, I do Fabletics.
There you go, right? They're both difficult to shop, especially if you're shopping. Like if I'm shopping for my wife, I'm like, I don't know what size and crop level and all that stuff. A 25-inch pan, a 28-inch pan, I don't know. But I do know that they have a way of making you comfortable through their educational process and that they hire for that skill. And I did have a gentleman, I was telling the story, and I had a gentleman come up to me at the end of my speech, and he says he had taken their job description for a teller, and he put it in a chat GPT, and he asked it to rewrite the job description in the style of a Lululemon educator job description. And I'm telling you, it was the best bank job description I have ever read in my life. I would send my daughter to apply for that job.
Well, even as you're talking about that, I think to myself, all the companies that are great at customer experience and are great at delivering experiences for their customers, they're very selective in how they hire.
Right.
Right. And they look for certain types of traits. And in fact, one could argue that banks could go and poach from some of those places because those folks are focusing on certain great traits, right?
Right.
But what would you say would be some of the important traits that banks need to look for in the bankers of the future? And by the way, the folks in banking now can be retrained to be those bankers of the future. At least some of them can.
So if you're born with the natural behavioral traits, yes. But so you asked me, like, what are some of the qualities? What are some of the traits? And I don't think those are things that are training
Okay,
things.
so is this like basketball? You can't teach
You
height?
can't teach height. I can't teach extroversion. I can't teach curiosity. I can't teach you to be a naturally caring and empathetic person. Empathy is so, I mean, I just finished telling you that a big reason why people go into the bank branch in the future is problem resolution.
Absolutely.
Well, you better be empathetic. I can't teach empathy. I can teach a naturally empathetic person various tactics to improve their empathy. But I mean, not to sound brash, but I'm like, if you're a jerk, you're a jerk. I can't teach you to not be a jerk. And some people don't have the patience. Some people don't have the natural inquisitive nature to them. You know, soft skills are, yeah, I can teach you how to greet and I can teach you how to say thank you. But I mean, do I really need to train you? If I need to train you for those things,
Well,
why
then
not
it's
hire
not
you?
your superpower. It's interesting. As you talk about that, you make me think of a case that happened to me many years ago with a car rental company.
Mm.
I'll leave the name of the car rental company out, but we had some friends who were over from Europe. At the time, I lived in Columbus, Ohio. They wanted to rent a car, use it while they were in Ohio, then drive a bunch of other places and drop it off in Washington, D.C. So I called the line for that car rental company. It's a long time ago. And they said, yeah, we got cars. You can pick up the car at the airport. I reserve the car, go to the airport and pick up the car. And the lady at the airport says, oh, we don't have any cars. So then we're trying to figure out, well, you guys going to have cars tomorrow, whatever. And, they have this, like a hotline right on the desk. So she's dealing with another customer after we talked to her and, we're trying to figure out what to do. So I just grabbed the phone and I pick it up and the guy on the phone says to me, they have cars. He said, you want a car today? And I say, yes. And he said, okay, well, they have cars and they need to give you one. So I talked to the guy. I go back to the lady, and she says, "I hate people." She says, "You go behind my back," and it's like, "Well, you were standing right here." But the moment she said that, and for somebody who's been in customer
Yeah.
experience for a long time, I thought to myself, if you hate people, why do you do this job? Now, hopefully, we're not dealing with people who hate people, right? But I get the point that you're making that, there are some things that are superpowers for people, and they really do need to, banks need to hire for that superpower, right? But yes, tell me more of what do you see these folks doing? Tell me about, okay, we don't have to make it a whole day, but like a day in the life of a digital specialist or, a problem resolution specialist or somebody who's giving advice in the branch.
Yeah, I mean, part of the joy is that visiting a bank branch has become more and more predictable. You and I have talked about appointment setting.
Mhm.
And I don't mean predictable necessarily for the customer that they woke up one day and knew that they were going to come into the bank branch. But from a workforce management standpoint, the ability to predict the number of people that are going to come into a bank branch on any given day
Mhm.
and what they are coming in for has greatly, vastly improved.
Oh yeah.
And so that allows that day in the life, and even how many people do we need in a bank branch on any given day has become so much more predictable and controllable.
Mhm.
And so I think that, I wrote a piece the other day about the idea of like the universal associate, and that's been like a widely overused phrase.
Mhm.
But we do need a wildly nimble employee who has the patience to understand that not every day is going to be predictable. Not every day is going to be like, all right, I'm going to come in, I'm going to stand at the teller line for 6 hours, then I'm going to take my lunch. Then when I come back from my lunch, they're going to have me, do some CD maturity list calling for an hour. And then I'm going to, do some operational audit. I'm going to do some logs, and then I'm going to finish my day on the drive-through teller line. Like
Mhm.
that predictability and scheduling, or even having an employee who wants that predictability in their schedule is, I think, long gone. So the day in the life is is somewhat, you get what you get and you don't get upset.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to hire people who are okay with knowing that every day is going to be a little bit different. That is vastly different than the persona of the past, though, for a teller. The folks that we've hired to be tellers, underwriters, call center agents, these are all people who thrive in predictable environments that they know and they like that basically every day is going to be the same. We can't hire that person anymore.
Well, it's interesting though, because as I think about it, and when I think about Universal, I mean, there's certain things in the banking environment that require licenses to do.
Right.
You have people who are going to be able to do some things. They may not be able to do everything because, hey, not everybody's licensed. Yes, but I get the whole point about people being fluid, being flexible, being able to handle things that are not predictable. So when you look at the branch of the future, I mean, like when you think about the experiences that are really going to connect the customers to the branches, what are some of those experiences that make a difference in the branch that these folks feel connected?
Part of it comes down to why else does the branch exist?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, well over a decade ago now, branches became coffee shops. And I'm not here to tell you that branches should be coffee shops.
Mm-hmm.
But I am here to tell you that branches need to exist for purposes other than that of it's just a branch.
Mm-hmm.
It is a community center. And just like, bankers were always told, go out and meet COIs. And while that's great, I'm like, but the banker's the COI. The banker's the center of influence. And the branch ought to be that too. The branch ought to be an epicenter for a community. And, you mentioned the growing physical footprint of Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
I did a prototype branch design not that long ago. I put an Amazon dropship box location right in the bank branch.
Oh, yeah. Well,
why not?
I mean, at my former employer, we had Amazon lockers in branches all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But when you ask about experiences, a couple immediate things came to mind. First of all, is even the design of the branch, the millwork, the furniture, where you sit, has changed so drastically. The way that we've been able to design that choreography between the customer and the banker, and helping the banker position their body literally where they are in a different way. And it's funny, we have this one design that we put in a lot of branches for platform bankers. But what it requires is that the computer screen for the platform banker can be just as easily seen by the customer as it can by the banker. And you wouldn't believe how much pushback we got from bankers. Like, well, wait a minute. This isn't private. The customer's going to be able to see what's on my screen.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah. What? It's their money. I mean, what an incredible concept that, yes, in fact, we are going to allow your customer to have the ultimate transparency and see what is on their screen. And then the second thing I would bring up as far as an experience goes is the idea of the branch being a billboard. 24 hours a day. A branch is, before anything else, it is a extension of brand. And through digital signage, people ask me all the time, hey, if I didn't have big budget and I needed to renovate my branches, where am I going to get the biggest bang for my buck to really bring the branch experience to life and help the brand come alive and deliver the customer something new? And every time I say digital signage, it can be seen from the outside, the inside. It can be passive. It can be interactive. It can be dynamic. There are so many different ways that digital signage can enhance the experience and even enhance the conversation that we have together, because maybe we have a big touch screen that has all the product information on it and so on. So the more that we can engage and put digital signage into a branch, the more possibilities it opens up in terms of what we can actually do with our customer. And the best part is the customer recognizes it right away. It's such a noticeable change in an old school branch that's been renovated, that it's like the ultimate bang for your buck for an FI, but also one that creates better moments and better conversations.
Well, look, I can tell you that when I think of digital signage, and I think of even managing wait time. So look, appointment setting is great. It adds to the predictability of who's coming into the branch, but you're not going to predict all of your visits, right? And so when people have to wait, if they have something on digital signage that's of interest to them, and digital signage can help to make the branch feel more like it's part of the community. If what's on that digital signage is relevant to what's going on in the communities, what relevant to that customer. It could be their local sports teams. It could be local events that are happening in the community. All of those things are connections, and they do definitely make a difference for customers. So let's go back to something that you talked about a little bit earlier, and that's the whole notion of Lululemon, associates being called educators, right? What about the notion of the people in the branches being educators? What do you think of that, and what kinds of things would they be educating people about in the branches?
So I hear my wife, the compliance officer, in the back of my head right now, reminding me that, and you said it earlier, that some folks are licensed.
Mm-hmm.
And, we have to be a little bit careful on advice
Mm-hmm.
and who's allowed to give advice and who's not allowed. There's no regulatory environment at the Lululemon like there is within a bank or a credit union.
Okay, I'm going to piggyback on that for a little bit because there's the whole notion of there's wealth management advice.
Right.
And, wealth management advice can only be given by certain people. Okay. But there's things about education where bankers may not even have to teach, but they just need to point people in the right direction.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who don't understand anything about credit scores. What's a good credit score? What's a bad credit score? How much difference does a credit score even make? Right? And look, if the bank doesn't help people to understand those things, who's going to help them to understand it?
But the bank hasn't been helping them understand those things for a long time. So if you ask the average American, where do they get financial advice? Their answer is typically Google or family member. If you ask a Gen Z where they get their financial advice, or you ask a millennial where they get their financial advice, the number one answer is TikTok.
Is that a good thing?
No.
Okay.
No. But very far down the list is a bank. And
because the bank doesn't have the reputation.
The bank doesn't have the reputation. They don't have the credibility. They don't have the relatability. Ask a millennial to go in and talk to Bob the banker, who's been sitting there forever, and say this is somebody I'm going to really connect with. But it also, I don't mean to keep going back to branch design, but it does constantly tie back to branch design. Is if you have a universal associate model, and in theory, anybody should be able to work with you for virtually anything, in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
And yet when I walk in, you're behind a teller line or some teller environment, and you're engaged in transactional work. As a customer, I'm going to make a reasonable assumption that you can't provide advice to me. You're just a teller.
Well, so it does come back. It does come back to branch design. But again, is that part of where the branch of the future should be going? That these folks, and so I'm using the term advice loosely, right?
Sure.
Because I even think about it is if you come into the branch and I coach you how to use your app, that's
advice.
That's advice, right? And to be quite frank, there's a lot of people who could use coaching on how to use their app.
That's right.
Right? If you come into the bank and, I help you to understand that it's a good idea for you to engage in budgeting. Or you might, separate your accounts out in a different way so that, you have different things that you save for or that you use your accounts for, right? You can compartmentalize certain things, because there's companies that are allowing customers to do that these days. That's advice, right? And the smarter people get about those things, 529s, for example, or things like that, those things are, advice. And it's not the same as going to somebody to make a wealth plan
Right.
or for somebody to go and manage your wealth for you. Different thing. And that requires licenses, right? But there are things that non-licensed people can do that make a connection with the customers, but it's also a lot of customers think this is the function of the bank, right? So, we've covered a lot of different, angles and territories and stuff like that. I mean, what are some of the cool stuff you guys are working on that, again, is pushing the bank into the future and making it, a better experience for the people who are coming along and participating in it?
I think it's designing environments to do everything you just described.
Mm-hmm.
Is to recognize that there are a number of people who come into a bank branch on any given day for any different reason. And that conversation requires not just a special person, but a special place.
Mm-hmm.
And the use the phrase branch of the future. I don't use that. I like branches of the future. Yeah. There's got to be multiple different wrinkles based on the market and the demographics and everything like that. But I think that a bank branch of the future needs to have a variety of different zones, is the phrase that we use.
Okay.
That are each designed for their own type of conversation with its own type of person. I mean, if I'm in my 20s and I'm coming into a bank branch to borrow money for my very first time,
Mm-hmm.
I might make a connection with a banker in a very different type of seating environment than my 78-year-old grandparents who are coming in to make sure that their retirement money is still safe and secure, who might want a little more private and formal area versus
Mm-hmm.
me, that I might want something a little more chill and loungy.
Mm-hmm.
And so creating branches that have these different vignettes, these
Mm-hmm.
different areas, these different zones where the customer can choose the journey that they want, they can choose the environment that feels best to them, I think is a pretty magical thing that I don't see enough design firms doing, but I don't see enough banks and credit unions taking advantage of. There's still traditional, this is where we're going to do our transactions, then we're going to have some offices, and we're going to have some platform desks.
Mm-hmm.
That's still
It's just
the model.
the same old, and you're saying
It just
shake it up a little.
It maybe looks a little prettier, and maybe the desks, they look a little cooler, and the lighting is a little more modern, and maybe there's a little bit more self-service. But at the end of the day, it's still transaction, office, platform. 3 basic zones.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to really expand our thinking of what those zones can be and the types of areas where, the old days of buying life insurance, I talk about this all the time. The old days of buying life insurance, you bought life insurance in your home. The insurance person came to your home, and you either sat at the kitchen table or you sat in the living room, and that's where advice happened. That's where connections happen.
Mm-hmm.
I want to bring that back. And I'm not suggesting the banker goes to the home. I'm suggesting we bring the home to the bank.
Yeah. Bring it in.
Now, look how we're sitting.
Yep.
Like, this could be a banking conversation right here.
Absolutely.
Like, and if there came a point where we needed the technology to become a part of this conversation, then I can have a tablet or I can make a computer kind of come out. There's a million different things that we can do to take what would be a normal conversational environment and all of a sudden bring tech into it so that we can actually transact and do business. But, I'm sick of saying that the legacy systems and the core providers are holding back design, and we can't do this and we can't do that because of legacy systems. Listen, I think those hurdles have become low enough that we could trip over them at this point, and that we can build anything that can be dreamed up, and we should be dreaming more. And that's why we created our ideation center. We created an environment in Arizona where financial institutions can come out and, seeing is believing, and sit in that different chair and have a conversation in that different environment. Because when you just look at it on a plan, you go, I don't know, and what are our members going to say? And by all means, survey your members, survey your customers, do focus groups, shop the competition. But the competition better include other retailers too, by the way, not just other financial institutions.
Yeah, yeah.
But then to really test it, the big banks can have an incubator. The big banks can have a lab. And they do. The little guys can't. And that's why we created ours.
Okay.
So that the little guys could use our incubator as their own. And I can't encourage that enough.
Okay. Well, hey, we've covered a lot of territory. Unfortunately, we're pretty.
We're going to need an episode 2.
Okay, that's cool, and we can go to episode 2. But in wrapping up episode 1, if there's one thing you want to leave with, the folks who are listening, what would it be?
I get asked that question all the time, and I answer it the same way every time.
Okay, let's hear it.
Dare to be different.
Okay.
It's very easy to do what the guy across the street is doing. And, I ask this question often if I'm keynoting an industry event. I often start with the same question. And I ask the FIs to raise their hand if a big part of the value proposition that they advertise is that their people make the difference.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody puts their hand up. I'm like, so if you look around the room, there's not a lot of differentiation here.
Mm-hmm.
So if every bank and credit union is saying the same thing in terms of what their value is, and they all have the same products and services, what is there to make you special? Unless you dare to be different.
Well, I think that absolutely is a great point. A great parting shot. Dare to be different. And I think that a lot of times people don't dare enough, right? And so, let's have our listeners take that away. Our listeners and our watchers take that away. Let's see what they're going to do with it, right? And so, to everyone who has taken the time to join us for this episode of Be Customer Led, I want to thank you for spending the time with us. I'm sure you've gotten some ideas that you can take and you can use. And these ideas, even though we've been talking about it in the context of banking, don't only apply to banking, just like we keep saying that the folks in banking only need to look at their other competitors. They need to, or their banking competitors, they need to look at other folks who are in the retail business too. So I'm sure you can take some of these ideas and use them in your world. I want to thank you for joining us, and I want you to come back next time because we're going to have another exciting program for you. And again, thank you for your time, and we'll see you again on Be Customer Led next time.
Thanks for listening to Be Customer Led with Marbu Brown. We are grateful to our audience for the gift of their time. Be sure to visit us at becustomerled.com for more episodes. Leave us feedback on how we're doing or tell us what you want to hear more about. Until next time, we're out.